Hey everyone, it's Lance with Christianity Minute. Last time we were together, Jesus called a disciple, Matthew, and was questioned why he would eat with the likes of publicans. Well, the priests were thinking that if he were really the Christ, how could he be in so much association with sinners? Check out that video here if you haven't already, and be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our study of Luke. Today, Jesus' disciples will be called into question about their lifestyle and compared with the disciples of John. Let's start Luke chapter 5, verses 33 through 39. And they said to him, "The disciples of John fast often and offer prayers, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours eat and drink." And Jesus said to them, "Can you make wedding guests fast while the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast in those days." He also told them a parable. "No one tears a piece from a new garment and puts it on an old garment. If he does, he will tear the new, and the piece from the new will not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the new wine will burst the skins, and it will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But the new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. And no one drinking old wine desires new, for he says, the old is good." All right, so let's take a second and talk about fasting. According to Webster's dictionary, a fast is a voluntary abstinence from food for a space of time, as a spiritual discipline or as a token of religious humiliation. So, to be without food or water, or both. We've already seen Jesus fasting back in Luke chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, as a show of humiliation, making himself weak before the devils so that he might be sufficiently tempted. We see Moses fasting on Mount Sinai in Exodus chapter 34 and verse 28, as he wrote the 10 Commandments again. We see Daniel fasting in Daniel chapter 9 and verse 3 as he prayed to God in regards to the 70 years of desolation in Jerusalem. In various places throughout the Bible, we see fasting, and it's always for one particular purpose: to focus spirituality. In a way, it's a statement to God that one believes that the spiritual is more important than the needs of the physical body. And such is for the individual's benefit to have mental focus in that exercise of fortitude. It is not required to fast, though. In our passage, it's noted that John instructed his disciples to fast. Why? To focus their minds on repentance, which was his message. As a side note that we'll get into in a minute, for John to tell his disciples to fast would have made it an old law requirement, in the same that his baptism was required according to Jesus in Matthew chapter 3, verse 15, when he talks about all righteousness. Okay, it would make sense to ask for fasting because, well, that's why people fast. Well, okay, the Pharisees were also asking people to fast twice a week, as evidenced by Luke chapter 18, verse 12 in the parable of the scribe and the Pharisee. They did it as a religious tradition, one that was to be followed for piety. We'll see this as a theme running throughout the Gospels. Was there anything wrong with fasting? No. But was there something wrong with their traditions being on the same level as the requirements from God? Oh yeah. If you want to argue that that's not what they're saying here, okay. Let's just say that they teach it for the same reason as John, which is perfectly acceptable. I think that's ignoring other occurrences of the like in the Gospels, but I can accept a differing point of view. Their main issue was the fact that Jesus' disciples did not fast. Okay, Jesus' response is a little confusing at first, but let's read what he's saying again. He says in verse 34 that, "Can you make the wedding guests fast while the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast in those days." Okay, so what's he talking about? Who's the bridegroom? Is this some kind of parable? Well, there are several verses referring to this concept that Jesus is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31 and 32. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. The two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. Here, Paul is writing to the Ephesians and equates marriage to Christ's relationship to the church. We'll see later on in Revelation an even more profound moment of marriage. Revelation chapter 19, verses 7 and 8. It says, "Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and the bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure, for the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints." Jesus is the bridegroom, and the bride is his church, which we see very clearly in Revelation chapter 21, verses 2 and 3, which says, "And I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And then I heard a loud voice from the throne, saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God." Jesus' bride is the church, and the church is made up of the members. To dwell with God and for God to dwell with the church is the future of the church. Jesus is that bridegroom, and the future church is made up of his followers, in this case, his disciples. Why do they need to be focused on piety when God himself is literally among them? Now was a time to be joyous and to enjoy and take in every minute of Jesus being on earth, because, let's face it, he wasn't going to be there very long. Then Jesus goes into this parable, the parable of the wineskins. Remember when I mentioned that fasting had become something of the old law, since it seems to have been required by John now? Jesus tells them through this parable that new law was in the works. He mentions clothing. Why destroy the new to fix the old? It doesn't match, and it's inferior due to its age. The wineskins are the same way. Wine is made with yeast, which creates alcohol. The fermentation process produces gases, which, when stored in the wineskins, it'll stretch the wineskins to their limit. This is fine because by the time the skins have reached that limit, the fermentation process is reaching its end, producing wine. Once the wine is emptied from the skins, they need to be discarded, though. Why? Because if you put new wine in old wineskins, well, the skins can't stretch anymore. When the pressure from the gas begins to build up, skins will only burst. Jesus' analogy is with elements of the old law and how it's incompatible with the new law. And the new law will be so good that nobody will be really interested in going back to the old. More on that later in our study. For today, let's keep in mind our authority. There are many in the world who try to bind things on people just isn't a part of God's law. Or maybe those things used to be part of God's law in the past, but it is no more. We need to be diligent unless we, like the new garment, be destroyed, trying to hold on to the traditions of the past. Well, next time we'll see the Pharisees continuing to scrutinize Jesus and his disciples, trying to find fault in what they do while looking through the lenses of their own imposed traditions. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. Feel free to share any part of this video, and if you'd like to donate, there are links in the description. If you'd like to keep learning more, check out some of my other videos on your screen now. And I will see you next time right here on Christianity Minute.